The Diwan of Khwaja Masood bin Saad bin Salman refers to Agra for the first time in his work in 1080-81. The city of Agra, from then onwards, not only witnessed a time of glory but also periods of abandonment. Agra was left in anonymity until Sikandar Lodi shifted his capital from Delhi to Agra. Due to its strategic position and its connectivity to prominent cities like Lahore and Delhi. Another reason for the shifting of capital to Agra was the turbulent situation in Gwalior that was in proximity to Agra, but the years of instability still prevailed. In 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi, the successor of Sikandar Lodi in the First Battle of Panipat. Babur was the Timurid prince from Fargana, which is in the present-day Uzbekistan. He established a new dynasty in India, but the periods of conflict did not end until the coming of Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, the grandson of Babur. On 17 Muharram 1996, which is 30th October 1558, Akbar came to Agra through the way of Jamuna. Abul Fazl describes in his account that Akbar ordered the construction of a fort at the place which was the center of Hindustan. Abul Fazl records, His Majesty the Shahanshah gave celestial rank to the citadel which was known by the name of Badalgarh by his alighting there. He further notes that an order was then issued that the old fort which was built on the east bank of the Jamuna and whose pillars were shaken by the revolutions of the time and the shocks of the fortune should be removed, and then an impregnable fort should be built of hewn stones. The two other historians of Akbar's reign, namely Mullah Abdul Qadir Badauni and Khwaja Nizamuddin, agreed that Akbar ordered the reconstruction of the fort under the direction of Qasim Khan Mir Barro Bahar. Regarding the laying of the foundation and the construction of the fort, Abul Fazl notes that the excavations were made through 7 stratas of the earth. The breadth of the wall was 3 Badshahi yards and its height was 60 yards. Every day, 3,000 to 4,000 active builders and strong-arm laborers carried on the work. Ever since its conception, the Agra fort has been a much contended piece of architecture and has changed hands frequently, not unlike the Kohinoor diamond it once housed. आगरा किले का इतिहास उसी की तरह खूबसूरत, दिलचस्प और अचल है। अगर आगरा किले की दीवारें बोल सकती तो हमसे ना जाने कितनी कहानियां साझा करती। The Agra fort is much more than just a wall structure of red sandstones. A pleasing milieu of architecture and ideologies, the fort features both Islamic calligraphy and Hindu motifs of birds and bees. Spread across 2.41 kilometers, the fort is semicircular bound by a long, almost straight wall facing the Yamuna on the east. The inner wall is higher than the outer, both studded with concentric bastions at regular intervals.
Abul Fazl remarks that the red sandstone, quarried at the ridge of Sikri and hence known as the Sikri sandstone, can be chiseled so skillfully that it is finer than wood.
In his book Aine Akbari, he also remarks that the fort built during the reign of Akbar also contained more than 500 buildings of masonry after the beautiful designs of Bengal and Gujarat, which the master sculptors and the cunning artisans have fashioned as architectural models. The fort has been meticulously built, keeping in mind the protection and safety of its residents. Hence the double fortifications, the moat running around the fort, and the carved pathways. The fort has the Amar Singh Gate, Delhi Gate, and the Khijri Gate in its different directions.
The Delhi Gate is one of the most refined gates of the Agra fort. Located on the western side towards a route facing Delhi, Its crooked entrance was devised with sharp curves to reduce the progression of the opponent army. Its inner entrance, known as Hatyapur, is finely ornamented. Formerly, 2 stone elephants with riders stood on either side of the gate. The riders were seemingly the replicas of Jaimal and Fatta. Jaimal Rathod, cousin of Mirabai, Fatta, Fateh Singh Sisodia. Both of them fought bravely against the Mughal army during Akbar's conquest of Mewar to show his might and power. The gate is now under military occupation. 12 feet high and 9 feet wide, the Ghazni Gate has an interesting story attached to it. Bought by General Nott as a relic of the Afghan expedition, it was identified erroneously as the Sandalwood Gate of Somnath that Mahmud of Ghazni took with him in 1024-25 AD. But the Deodar Wood Gate, having arabesque designs and Kufic inscription, show that it did not belong to Somnath.
The Khijri Gate is the gate located near the Ghats. And this is one of the reasons why the women quarters were located near the Khijri Gate as a way of protection and safety for women.
Akbar Gate was renamed Amar Singh Gate after the episode of Rao Amar Singh of Marwar, who assassinated the Mir Bakshi of Shah Jahan, Salabat Khan, in 1644. A popular legend recounts that Amar Singh cut through the crowd of the court and escaped the Mughals by jumping across the moat on horseback. However, in reality, Amar Singh and his men were cut into pieces while they were trying to escape. Thus, the gate is now popularly known as Amar Singh Gate and is the only entryway to the fort opened for visitors. After entering from Amar Singh Gate, we come across the Jahangiri Mahal. Constructed in 1565, the Jahangiri Mahal is one of the palaces from Akbar's time. Built for the exclusive use of kings and his queens, such dwellings at that time overlooked the rivers. This edifice may have served as the nucleus for the unified palace layout that had 3 semi-independent structures. These included the buildings that joined it from Akbari Mahal in its south, Khas Mahal to its north. Its positioning seems to suggest that it provided a suitable background to many religious ceremonies.
This mahal is a complex organization of interconnected rooms that are arranged in successive bands along 2 courtyards. As a characteristic feature of Akbar's reign, various design components from across the subcontinent had been incorporated into the construction of this building. For example, the name Bengali Mahal comes from the Bangladar chhajjas or curved roofs that were used on buildings. The multi-storied palace is faced with a finely carved red sandstone which follows a predominantly Islamic scheme, and it also incorporates a few Hindu motifs. Essentially, this palace was inspired by the Man Mandir that was built in Gwalior 75 years before by Raja Ram Singh Tomar.
Towards the north and south of the courtyard are 2 large open-sided halls or dalans with exquisitely carved columns which are reminiscent of the Gujarati Jain temple architecture. Another interesting and intriguing aspect of this architecture is the depiction of the 6-pointed star or the hexagram, which is often associated with Judaism. We see that this symbol is often shown in Akbar's reign as a means of homage to his father Humayun. Humayun was infatuated with astrology, and he organized everything from his wardrobe to his court along the lines of planetary alignment.
In Mughal architecture, another rarely occurring symbol that was prominently showcased in the reign of Akbar was the all-important Hindu symbol of the swastika. An entire panel is ornated with the symbol of the swastika in one of the rooms in the Jahangiri Mahal. Its positioning seems to suggest that it provided a suitable backdrop to many religious ceremonies.
Maurya Mandapa, or the Peacock Hall, carries peacock motifs holding serpents in their mouths. Tastefully decorated geometrical designs, inlaid with white marble on a red sandstone background, the facade of the Mahal is a feast to behold. Right after the Jahangiri Mahal, there are 2 identical palaces known as the Summer and the Winter Palace.
The summer and winter palaces are essentially identical building structures that are connected by a veranda. The only difference is that the summer palace consists of hollow walls. Essentially, the summer palace consists of this overhead tank that was manually filled by the water from Yamuna river, and then this water was passed through the hollow walls. When air struck through these waters within the hollow walls, it resulted in cool air. And then this water was collected in a sort of hole that was created within the veranda, which was the fountain. This water then collected would be recycled and put up back into the tank for the cooling purposes. This idea that the summer palace consists of hollow walls is often verified by tourists as well, when they speak on one side and can be clearly heard on the other side at a distance of a few meters as well. Moreover, we see that there are clear arrangements for ventilation within this summer palace. From the inside, we see this kind of vent that indicates that it's an opening, but on the outer side we see it's closed. Essentially, it's a hidden ventilation system, and for cross ventilation there are multiple other openings as well.
यहाँ से आगे बढ़ते हुए हम खास महल में प्रवेश करेंगे। शाहजहानी महल के बगल में स्थित खास महल को अब्दुल हामिद लाहौरी ने आरामगाह मुकद्दस के नाम से इतिहास के पन्नों में उतारा। शाहजहां ने 1637 में अपने पूर्वजों द्वारा बनाए किसी इमारत को तोड़ के इसके निर्माण के आदेश दिए थे। यह निजी महल शाही हरम की औरतों के मनोरंजन और एकांत के लिए बनाया गया था। सामने के सुसज्जित कक्ष में लगे 5 फव्वारे महल की सुंदरता को और भी बढ़ा देते हैं।
पूरा महल संगमरमर का बना हुआ है एवं दोनों तरफ जालियां हैं, जिससे नदी का सुंदर नजारा देखने को मिलता है। अंदर की ओर खुला हॉल है, जिसकी दीवारों पर पारंपरिक एवं पुष्पीय पैटर्न बने हुए हैं। रोशनी के लिए दीवारों में आले बनाए गए थे, जिसमें मोमबत्तियां रखी जाती थी। साथ ही साथ हॉल की छत में लोहे के छल्ले मिले हैं, जिससे यह अनुमान लगा सकते हैं कि यहाँ झूमर लटकाए गए होंगे।
खास महल के ठीक सामने है अंगूरी बाग। ऐसा कहा जाता है कि इसके निर्माण के लिए शाहजहां ने खुद कश्मीर के बागानों से मिट्टी मंगवाई थी। इस बाग में अंगूर और खुशबूदार फूल उगाए जाते थे, जिस कारण से इसका नाम अंगूरी बाग पड़ा। चूंकि यह शाही हरम के बीच में था, इसलिए इसकी सुरक्षा और एकांत बनाए रखने के लिए इसके तीनों ओर दीवार बनाई गई।
यह बाग संगमरमर की पगडंडियों द्वारा 4 भागों में विभाजित है। इसके मध्य में बड़ा सा टैंक है, जिसमें फव्वारे लगे हुए हैं। पानी की आवश्यकता बावली व्यवस्था द्वारा पूरी की जाती थी।
अंगूरी बाग से अब हम बढ़ेंगे मुसम्मन बुर्ज की ओर। मुसम्मन बुर्ज के अलावा इसे शाह बुर्ज और सम्मन बुर्ज के नाम से भी जाना जाता है। इसका निर्माण जहांगीर के समय करवाया गया था। इस बुर्ज में जहांगीर ने जंजीरे अदल स्थापित की थी और जहांगीरनामा में इसके जिक्र से मालूम होता है कि जंजीरे अदल एक प्रशासनिक नीति न होकर केवल न्याय का प्रतीक थी। मुसम्मन बुर्ज से ताजमहल का हसीन नजारा इस बुर्ज को और भी दिलकश बनाता है। माना जाता है कि शाहजहां ने अपनी जिंदगी के आखिरी कुछ साल एक कैदी की तरह मुसम्मन बुर्ज में बिताए।
मुसम्मन बुर्ज एक अष्टकोणीय मीनार है। इसका विशाल मंडप नदी के किनारे एक गोलाकार गड्ढ को समेटता है। इन अष्टकोणीय पक्षों में से 5 पक्ष आगे की ओर बढ़ते हैं। सफेद संगमरमर का कोणीय ढांचा बीम एवं कोष्ठक प्रणाली में व्यवस्थित है। ऊर्ध्वाधर खंभों पर इसके भारी प्रभाव एवं सुंदर कोष्ठकों पर समर्पित क्षैतिज घूमने वाले छज्जों पर निर्भर करते हैं। हवेली के सबसे पूर्व में झरोखा है एवं जालीदार बैलिस्ट्रेड इसकी आकर्षक विशेषता है। पश्चिमी तरफ यह संरचना एक सजावटी मेहराब में निहित 3 उद्घाटनों के माध्यम से आंगन में ढलान के रूप में खुलती है। इसके मध्य में पानी का बेसिन है एवं दीवारों पर आले बने हुए हैं, जिनमें चित्र लगे हुए थे। इसकी छत पर 8 स्तंभ वाली संगमरमर की छतरी है जो मीनार को आकर्षक बनाती है।
From Musamman Burj, we will go to the Sheesh Mahal, which is partially opened for the visitors. Situated at the west end of Musamman Burj, it was built by Shah Jahan in 1637, and it served as a bath for the Khas Mahal.
The name Sheesh Mahal literally means a palace adorned with glass mosaic. Since medieval times, such glass palaces formed an essential part of the architecture of both Mughal and Rajput royal forts. This glass palace comprises of a 3-aisled hall, which is then attached to smaller rooms. The walls of this hall are adorned with panels of glass mosaic. Convex glass mirror pieces have been used, and it is interspersed with both floral and geometric designs, finely worked in a gypsum stucco. Lahori, the historian of Shah Jahan, claims that these glass mirror pieces have been brought from Halab, that is Aleppo in Syria. It was the major manufacturing site for such glasses at the time. The dadu panels in the outer hall have inlaid borders, and the colors red and black appear abundantly. And the stucco relief that appears above these panels depicts a guldasta or a bunch of flowers in combination with the glass mosaic work. The ceilings are ornamented with a stalactite pattern, and the chiseled work in conventional Persian motifs adorned the ceiling of the entrance portal. This palace was perhaps to be used as imperial baths because it has extra thick walls to ensure cool interiors, and it is primarily dark except for the lighting via reflections of the glasswork.
Further, one moves to Diwan-e-Am from Sheesh Mahal. Situated in the northwestern side of Anguri Bagh, Diwan-e-Am is a grand hall where Shah Jahan sat on the peacock throne and met his subjects.
40-pillared hall, today known as Diwan-e-Am or Chehel-Sutun, was used by the emperor to address the public. Since their ancestors, Timurids, have oriented themselves towards Persian culture, the term Chehel-Sutun in Persian symbolizes a hall with many, though not 40 columns. Moving inside the hall, there are silver balustrades, which signifies that rank existed there. It was once believed that Shah Jahan ordered his nobles to embellish each way at their own expense. Vying with each other for recognition, they decorated the entire gallery with fine brocades and carpets, creating an opulent setting and a lasting memory of Mughal emperor's reign. The hall is constructed of red sandstone covered with a veneer of burnished plaster, gives it an appearance of white marble. Its bays are demarcated by covered ceilings set off by cusped arches, and large Shahjani columns spread on the outside is evolved from funerary and mosque architecture of Jahangir's reign. Towards the eastern wall of the hall is the race chamber with 3 tri-lobe openings serving as jharoka, a concept which has been taken from the forts of Rajput. The lower portion of the hall is carved with baluster columns, first ever used in the Mughal architecture, and it is inspired from the European prints. Moving further, there is a widened nave in the center which indicates in which direction a hall should be read. Therefore, we could conclude that Mughal emperor's aspiration to unite both political and spiritual authority can be seen in their explicit architectural expression.
अब हम बढ़ेंगे मच्छी भवन की ओर। लोक कथाओं की माने तो फव्वारों और कुंड से सजा ये मछली भवन बादशाह के मनोरंजन के लिए स्थापित किया गया था, जहां कई किस्म की मछलियां पाली जाती थी। पर शाहजहां के दरबारी इतिहासकार अब्दुल हामिद लाहौरी के अनुसार भवन की निचली मंजिल को शाही आभूषण संग्रहण केंद्र कहा जाता था। इसकी ऊपरी मंजिल पर बने संगमरमर के बरामदे में औरंगे ज़रीन मौजूद था, जहां से बादशाह भवन के नजारों को देखा करते थे।
मच्छी भवन चौकोर एवं भव्य जल महल है। इसमें मिले तालाब, फव्वारे एवं नालियां व्यवस्थित रूप से स्थित हैं। इसकी ऊपरी मंजिल पर संगमरमर का सिंहासन एवं काले रंग की कसौटी अर्थात टच स्टोन एक दूसरे के विपरीत स्थित हैं। अतः 1602 में अकबर के खिलाफ सलीम के द्वारा किया गया विद्रोह काले तख्त पर खुशनुमा नक्काशीदार शिलालेखों में वर्णित है।
After the Machi Bhavan comes Diwan-e Khas, which was built by the emperor to host the reception of the king's ambassadors and nobles in a private audience. The inlaid black marble inscription in Nashtalik, along with the frieze of the outer walls of the structure, ascribes its construction to Shah Jahan in the year 1636-1637.
Moving to the second important institution, Diwan-e-Khas. It was meant for holding cultural events and meeting important guests such as kings, nobles and ambassadors in private to deal with the important affairs of the state. It faces the river, which basically signifies that it was meant only for the emperor, which was a typical of Akbar's palace architecture. This hall has double chamber and it can be entered through 5 openings. Its construction is based on favorite Mughal pavilion theme of combination of inner walls known as Tumbi Khana. Moving inside of the hall, there is a Persian inscription which is inlaid with black stone. It compares this room to the highest heaven while Emperor himself linked to the sun. The ceilings are covered with gold and silver like the rays of the sun. It shows Emperor's semi-divine status. Emperor sat on a baldachin marble seat which is inspired from the European prince, and its baluster columns, semicircular arches and rich floral decorations contrast to the repeated monotony of Shahjahani columns that we see in Diwan-e-Aam.
Connected to the throne terrace on the northern side, one passes through Shahi Hammam from the Diwan-e-Khas.
Akbar built a large hammam known as the Shahi Hammam in the Akbar Fort complex that was on the riverside and next to the Khijri Darwaza or the water gate. It consisted of a set of vaulted rooms that also had baths. Essentially, there were 2 large octagonal spaces that further had smaller octagonal chambers within them that consisted of the private bathing spaces. The 2 octagonal chambers that were at the corners opened up to the river via perforated screens or marble jalis that allowed for the necessary privacy as well as to allow in light. It is also believed that there was an instrument room placed above the furnace in this complex, and that consisted of 2 pots, one in copper and one in brass. Every room also reveals an opening which is covered by a ventilation shaft at the apex of its domed ceiling. This shows that independent ventilators admitted light and air into these semi-dark cool spaces. The walls of the hammam are made via Lakhori bricks, and the interiors are covered with a lime stucco, which also still retains some of the remains of the Mughal floral decorations. The 3 overhead tanks that are deep are covered with the river water, which is drawn via a Persian wheel from near the Khizri or water gate. The Sheesh Mahal and the Musamman Burj were supplied with clean, potable water through clay and copper pipes and open channels that were watertight.
The history of Nagina Masjid's construction is quite debated. Some speculate that it was made by Aurangzeb for the Janana and his interned father. Others disregard this speculation, as the mosque was accessible even during the times of prayer to the nobles, whom the emperor met in Diwan-e-Khas. Thus the Parda Nashi women and the interned father couldn't be allowed to go to the mosque that was accessible through the open pathways. Another point of view is that Shah Jahan made the mosque for his nobles.
The architecture of the mosque is decent and simple. After entering the mosque, there is an open space where a tank is placed for the ablution. On the left hand side of this space, there is a 2-aisled hall which is divided into 6 parts by beautifully carved arches. The pillars of the hall are ornated with the floral motifs, which is in accordance to the Islamic belief that one cannot portray life in any form of art and architecture. The niches of the hall are made up of black marble. This hall is surmounted by 3 domes, and one can notice on each of the dome there is an inverted lotus and a kalash, which are the symbols derived from Hindu architecture. The balusters of this mosque shows an imperial character because these were only used in the royal buildings. The location and architecture of this mosque shows us that it was for royal use only.
Apart from Nagina Masjid, there is another beautiful mosque known as the Moti Masjid that was open for the public. It was a project that took 7 years to complete under Shah Jahan Moti Masjid or the Pearl Mosque is called so because the huge pearl that is said to have hung from its ceiling with a golden chain, crowned with 3 bulbous domes made out of marble, further justifies its name.
Situated on the right side of Diwan-e-Aam, Moti Masjid had been constructed on the basis of 4-Aiwan plan. 4-Aiwan plan is one of the architectural styles of mosque construction. In this, there is an open courtyard in front of the hypostyled hall, which is surrounded by walls on 3 sides. These walls are further punctuated with the open vaulted halls. One can enter to the mosque through eastern, northern and southern gateways. Eastern gateway is the largest of all the gateways and it is a double-storied red sandstone semi-octagonal structure. Northern and southern gateways are quite simpler and plain, and there is a double vaulted staircase in these gateways to enter the court of the mosque. There is a tank in the exact center of the court for ablution. From this court, we can approach Liwan in the west side of the mosque. This Liwan is a 7-bayed and 3-aisle prayer hall which is surmounted by 3 onion bulb-shaped domes. Modelled on the earlier Moti Masjid of Ajmer, there are striking similarities between the inscriptions, both portraying Shah Jahan as world ruler. Usage of paradisiacal imagery and sacred images in mosque shows Shah Jahan's interest in mysticism. It is an architectural marvel that one cannot see the domes and inner beauty of mosque standing on the ground near the mosque.
Babur recorded in his memoirs that he built a stone well or a baoli in Agra fort. It was 3-storied and essentially a bullock was used to turn the water wheel or the rehant for raising water. The construction of this baoli was completed after the Battle of Khanwa. At this point, a well was attached to the baoli and water from the baoli was first raised to this well. This system was then altered when Akbar built his palaces. At this point, there was the need of a 3rd rehant for raising water, and therefore an overhead 3-storied pavilion was built on top of the well, and 3 overhead tanks were built on its roof. The northern wall of the baoli has multiple pipe mouths. Each of them has a circular Persian tablet above them which denotes the hammams, tanks and canals to which the pipes conducted water respectively. Later, the plan was altered when the Shah Jahani Mahal was built, and essentially massive walls were constructed between the baoli and the well, and thus Babur's baoli was made defunct.
As early as 1637, Shah Jahan lamented the limitation of the space in Lahore and Agra to hold the court ceremonies. He was dissatisfied by the terrain of Agra as the imperial capital. Consequently, a new capital city in Delhi, known as Shahjahanabad, was commenced in 1639 by him. The complete fort of Shahjahanabad, then known as Qila'e Mubarak, was completed after 1639. Unlike the forts of Agra and Lahore, where the majority of the construction was done in the first regnal decade of Shah Jahan. The striking similarities of all the 3 forts are a testament of the continuing Mughal practices. The Diwan-e-Aam of Red Fort parallels the Chihil Sutun of Shah Jahan's 2 earlier forts in Agra and Lahore. What makes it even more remarkable is the jharoka used by Emperor to present himself to his nobles. This marble throne is etched with floral sprays and balustrous columns like the throne niche in the public audience hall of the Agra fort. The architectural setting and the motifs fashioned by inlay on the throne itself exemplify Shah Jahan's role as a semi-divine world ruler. The throne chamber is inlaid with black marble plaques illustrating flowers, lions, birds, and a panel of Orpheus playing his lute. However, the quadrangle comprising the hall is organized, positioned, and decorated much like that of Agra Fort, indicating continuity in the concepts and structures of Shah Jahan's palace architecture. Original part of a single quadrangle, the Diwan-e-Khas and the Hammam formed a single unit, like their equivalents at the Agra fort. The private audience hall's exterior, marked by the marble piers and the cusped arches, starkly contrasts those with its ornate interior adorned with gilds and jewels. The walls of the Diwan-e Khas are inscribed by the famous lines by Amir Khusro. Agar firdaus barruye zameen ast, hameen asto, hameen asto, hameen ast. Meaning, if there's a paradise on earth, this is it, this is it, this is it. Following the arrangements of his quarters in Lahore and Agra fort, Shah Jahan's residential quarters at Red Fort are built adjacent to the private audience hall. Similar to his public viewing balcony at the Agra fort, Khas Mahal has an arched window that serves as the Jharoka-e-Darshan of the east side overlooking the river. Inside the central chamber is a lengthy Persian inscription that records when the construction of the fort commenced, its formal inauguration, and compares it with the mansions of the heaven. Moti Masjid in Qila'e Mubarak was constructed by Aurangzeb to perform his prayers. It was, however, also used by the ladies of Harem. Unlike its counterpart in Agra, it is quite simple and its architecture is more similar to that of Nagina Masjid in Agra. But there's a difference in the floral decor of the marble relief. The sensuous character of the mosque is in contrast to the otherworldly perspective of its patron, which shows that the stylistic developments of this time were becoming independent of the direct involvement of the Mughal emperor.
With Aurangzeb's accession to the throne, Agra, which was once the seat of Mughal opulence and grandeur, was relegated to the background. However, in a city synonymous with the Taj Mahal and its ostentatious gesture of love, the Agra fort has held its own wonderfully. And while it's the Taj Mahal that continues to witness the most footfall of selfie-clicking tourists and IG aficionados, the Agra fort has carved its own niche in the minds of history buffs and general public alike.
सन 1983 में आगरा किले को यूनेस्को द्वारा विश्व धरोहर स्थल घोषित किया गया। और क्यों नहीं, आगरा किला मुगल वास्तुकला का एक प्रख्यात नमूना है जो हमेशा से ही सत्ता पलट का शिकार रहा है। लोधी से लेकर मुगल, मराठा, अंग्रेज और भारतीय सरकार तक सभी ने इस किले पर अपनी अमिट छाप छोड़ी है, जो इसके भूत, वर्तमान और भविष्य को आकार देती है।
A fort that has stood witness to bloodshed and celebrations, wars and peace, princes and paupers alike, the Agra fort holds within itself several stories yet untold.